Hey, good morning. This is Jared and Nate with eCarrierCheck, and we're excited to bring you some new value today. We're talking about all things shippers today, how to provide value, how to really help just drive your business. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But before we get into that, Nate, I know we got some exciting stuff today. We're giving a hat away, so I'm excited about that. We got some new hats, pretty cool looking.
Yep.
A little trucker hat there. So take time and throw your email in the comments, and we'll be drawing that out and making sure we get out that in the mail next week. So take some time there. But Nate, talk about your week, man. How was your week?
Yeah, well, besides the office getting some colds, we got through it. It's that time of the year, but no, it's a good week. I really am glad we're talking shippers today. I kind of brought this to your attention yesterday. I've been talking to quite a bit of people, and they're asking how to provide value for a shipper, how to get a shipper, and what will make me different than any other broker. So I'm really glad to have this topic today and kind of see what value we can bring to everyone watching today.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, any questions? Obviously, Rob's on. We got a Facebook on there. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to, drop us a question right in the comments, and we'll be able to help you out for sure. So, so a couple things about today, and when it comes to shippers, right? We do a lot of cold calls on this show, which I find
I enjoy.
Very entertaining, right? We get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, but what do you do when you get somebody past that cold call?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm really glad to talk about today. We like you mentioned, we do the live calls, but we never really talk about once you get past it. So, and that's the hard part is what do you do, right?
Absolutely.
You can be different, be creative.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is how do you differentiate yourself between you and the other brokers that are out there, or the other carriers that are out there, whatever it may be, right?
Yep.
So, I think first things first is when you're getting set up, this is no different than, building a house and having a good foundation. It is so important. I mean, this is a big one. It's so important that you take time to get to know everyone in their organization, and they get time to understand who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason why this is important is, maybe you're a solopreneur, that's just one of you or two, but from your side of things, you need to know, well, who's handling stuff on the dock? Who am I communicating pricing to? Right. Who's paying my bill? Right. And so I think getting your foundation set, understanding who the key players are, and really just getting kind of, okay, I understand the shipper. I know who pays the bills. I know who's on the dock. I know who does appointments. I know what technology they use for this. There's a lot of different things in that regards that you've got to have a good foundation.
I agree. Definitely.
They didn't build a pyramid upside down.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Definitely.
It'd be really friggin' cool if they did. But they didn't.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing, to add some value to that, where eCarrierCheck can come in and add some value to you is, well, let's look up those shippers. We can show you what type of equipment they're utilizing. Heck, we can show you where we've seen some of their freight going, and we'll take you right up to their website. You can start prospecting, figure out what they do, how they do it, who you're going to be talking to.
Yeah.
So eCarrierCheck is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
I love it.
I honestly, and even having coffee with the eCarrier custom and boss coffee mug also. Exactly.
Cheers.
Yeah, Brian, I'm glad you're on, man. It's good to hear. Good to see you. Hope you've been well. I wonder how the step deck's going. You have to kind of let us know. I'm always thinking about you. Once you have that foundation, you're right. You hit it on the head. eCarrierCheck can help with identifying things that they may not have told you. Different types of equipment, where are they sending freight? Because to be honest with you, until you really build trust, we're talking new shippers here. You just got, this guy set up. Are they really going to tell you the whole story?
Yeah, sometimes no. I mean, they're probably in a hurry. Yeah. You just really never know.
Yeah, and you're the new guy.
Yeah.
Should they trust you right away?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to build trust, and that trust is something that builds over time. To be honest with you, one of my favorite shippers, I won't say his name, but one of my favorite shippers, they had, I think, 12 locations across the country.
Okay.
I started with just, phone call. Hey, what do you got today? I knew his busy time was, kind of May to August. And I would be constantly just saying, hey, I've got some trucks in your area, which was true. I did, have some really good local relationships. And I just slowly built up trust by being consistent in my communication.
Yep.
Right. So how do you add value to a shipper? Be consistent in your communication. Don't just kind of go through the motions, even if they're sending you a quote, and you're just responding. I heard a sales guy say the other day, this was kind of the most interesting thing, and he's doing, $300,000-$400,000 in margin with a shipper here. And he goes, I actually haven't picked up the phone and talked to them over the phone in over 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought about it, and I'm like, boy, I think you just need to don't take them for granted, right? Yeah. I think you got to continue to build a relationship. There's things that you don't know about shippers.
Right.
Maybe it's something to do with their inbound. Maybe it's something to do with their raw material. There's so many different things. So, stay consistent in your communication.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. This is kind of interesting. Is one of the things that you can do to stay consistent with your communication, because sometimes it's just monotonous. You come in Monday and you say, hey, what can I help you with? You send a quick email. Yep. You send out 20 emails to 20 clients. Hey, what can I help you with this week? Right?
Yep.
But why not take a minute, literally 1 minute, go to Google Alerts, put in the client's name and push submit. And every time there's something that comes up about that company in the newspaper and KNEB, whatever it may be, right? You have the ability to go in and see what's going on with it.
Yeah, you can stay on top of that and just stay updated. So that's a really good idea. I like how, just kind of, honestly, it took you a while to kind of figure that out, I'm assuming, so if you're a new freight broker watching today, these are things you'll pick up on. We don't have the answers to everything. We just love to provide values that worked for Jared or for other brokers we worked with. So I love that. I love that alert thing.
I even we have a Facebook user. I can't see all the usernames here, but he says, I check with them every morning. They appreciate it. They do. They want to know, hey, I know that I can trust this guy. He's going to move some freight. He's going to tell me when the friggin', he's going to tell me when the truck's going to be there. There's some value. How do you add value to shippers? You over communicate. You let them know when the truck's going to be there. You provide a bill of lading, unless they have a bill of lading system, like some kind of TMS or WMS that kicks it out. Right. But I think that's really important. The next avenue of adding value is just how much you respect their time. Right. If somebody sends over an email, this is something else that came up this week, which I thought was really interesting. Shipper update them with delays and ETAs. Just being transparent. Honestly, just letting them know, hey, here's the situation. The driver is 35 minutes away. One of the things that I think you said delays and ETAs. One of the things that I think is really important to give shippers value is your tracking tool, your real-time tracking. There's quite a few of them that are out there. How do you just know where these guys are at, right? And in giving them delays and just being completely honest and transparent. Those conversations, let's be honest, they suck. Nobody wants to deal with it, right? But you have to. You just swallow everything you got and just have the conversation. And they would rather have that. And guess what? You're going to build trust quicker. Right?
I agree.
So, but what I was going with is respecting their time is anytime a shipper, and this is really what kind of pushed us over the edge when it came to our business model as a brokerage, is anytime we got a quote from a shipper, we got an email from a shipper, we got a phone call, whatever it was, everything, it was immediate. It was quick to get a quote. It was quick to get them a response. It was quick to call them back. Hey, here's the issue. Here's what I'm doing. And to be honest with you, sometimes they just want a solution.
Right.
We're in logistics. We should be providing solutions.
A good service, customer service right there.
Right.
So, I enjoy that.
Yeah. So Leandro says, can you name some tracking tools we can use for our brokerage? Absolutely. There's a handful of them out there. There's, Project 44. There's going to be Macro Pointer. I believe they call themselves Descartes now.
Okay.
They're just a simple app. Trucker Tools. text locate.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I like that guy. That guy is actually really legit and really simple software. I love that. I like simple software.
Me too. Yeah.
So there's a handful right there for you. Again, those of you who are just joining, we are giving an eCarrierCheck hat away. Throw your email in there, and we'll be drawing out a name and sending it out in the mail. You get a surprise. We're not going to tell you who got it. So take the time. I know we got some new users looking or new watchers on. So.
Hey Terry, thanks for joining.
Take a few minutes to put your email in there, and we'll get you that out. So speed to quote, speed to response. Definitely just take the time to get back to people as quick as you can. I mean, make it number one priority. And if you have too much going on, see if somebody can help you make it number one priority.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's something that we do. We always make sure we're calling people back. We can't answer every phone.
Yeah.
I love how you do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're providing shippers or value to our customers.
Right. And I think another thing to add to, obviously we talked about this before, but having an online presence. I think as a new broker, maybe set up a Facebook, maybe set up a LinkedIn account. I was talking to a lady yesterday. I said, get a LinkedIn account, connect with those shippers. It's a way to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And like you like to mention that on emails. Hey, I connect with you on LinkedIn. Maybe we could set it some time to talk. How do you find your carriers?
Yeah.
How does this thing go?
Absolutely.
So that's one of my favorite things is online presence. Social media is so powerful these days. Word of mouth. Join some groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
Join our community.
Yeah. What is our community on Facebook? 10-4 Trucking.
10-4 Trucking on Facebook. We got a nice little community. So don't be afraid to get on there, post some value, post your business, whatever you like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the definitely highway shut down the other day, call the receiver and updated them. No problem. Get here when you can. Still got there on time.
Love that.
Brian, that's what I'm talking about. It's just, honestly, we're really just talking about some really basic things.
Right.
It's just simple blocking and tackling. You know what I mean?
And don't get me wrong, we all slip, right? But we must learn from those mistakes. So we can do it. Yeah,
absolutely. So Eric asks, with P44 tracking, are they really giving us scared of MacroPoint for taking more of the market? We currently use MacroPoint because it has historically covered 70 to 75% of the carriers we book. Yeah. MacroPoint is just kind of it's the OG, right? It's the original friggin' company, right? Everybody had MacroPoint back in the day. Now they're called Descartes. They have a bigger suite of software tools. As far as, P44, they've grown massively, really an incredible leader at their company, Jet McCandless there, and they're doing what they do. Now, when it comes to P44, they're definitely going worldwide. They've got access to cargo ship data. They've got access to freight data all over the country, all over the world, and in multiple countries. So both interesting companies. Descartes is kind of that. They're like the original OG, Yeah. So it's just hard to get rid of it. Yeah. Good to see Maria's online today. Yeah, absolutely. I got 7 different tracking apps on my phone as well as my ELD. Yeah, that's honestly probably the biggest issue with the tracking world. Coming straight from a driver here. Brian drives a step deck out in West Coast, and it's just definitely one of those things where, for the love of God, you just you as a driver, you get 14 different apps. And you have to track however that broker needs them tracked, and they all use somebody different. I wish there was one specific platform, but I suppose
that'd be ideal.
That's what happens, right? Yeah. So, but interesting that 70 to 75% are MacroPoint. It's just going to be because they're the OG. That's my thought. A couple of the ways to add some value. So we're still talking shippers.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't provide a solution if you haven't experienced it.
Good
right?
Point, yeah.
I'll give you some examples. When I was a freight broker, I would move a lot of buildings. And here's a situation that came up to me, and I was kind of forced into providing a solution, right? Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where you didn't have a choice. You had to provide a solution. We moved a building. It was 40 foot, like 11 foot wide, a big old RGN, stretch RGN, got it into Denver. And we got there. And the crane that company hired was not going to be there. They canceled on them last minute.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't hire the crane. I don't know anything about cranes, right?
Yeah.
But what I did know is that my driver had to get home. He had an issue with some health issues with his wife, and he didn't have a choice. He even said he was going to deadhead 1,100 miles, leave his trailer there, and we could figure it out. And I said, you know what? Give me 3 hours. Let me figure this out. Yeah. And I had an experience the moment I'm like, well, if they're hiring a crane company, why can't I hire a crane company? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here's what ended up happening is I started calling people. I said, hey, I got this building. It's 25,000 pounds. It's 40 foot long, 11 foot wide. It's one of them little like utility buildings that you see,
Yeah.
And I had a crane company. They were 4 miles away. They said, you know what? Here's what we can do. We'll bring over 2 different cranes. We'll get this off. It was going to cost like $4,000. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who's going to pay for that? Mm-hmm. Right. And I called my shipper. I called him. I said, Gary, here's my solution. Here's my situation, because my driver had to go. And he goes, this is awesome. Now that guy has been a loyal customer forever, because guess what? We were willing to experience something. Mm-hmm. I just started making phone calls. I didn't know enough about it. I had some pictures. I had the DEMS. I had the weight, right? We trucked it, right? But you have to be willing to experience some of these solutions and get yourself into new things, right? Because the only way you're going to provide value for shippers is, the knowledge that you gain from those experiences like that, right? And you're not going to experience them if you're not willing to go down that road.
Right. So you were picking up this thing here, making calls,
just calling,
figuring out what you can find out.
Yeah.
It's part of the game.
It is. It's just, you just got to pick it up and go. Yep. And it's just definitely one of those things where you've got to be willing to do that. Right. Here's a Facebook user says, yes, my biggest problem is drivers are so dishonest about their ETAs. Some will say I'm 20 miles. That takes about 3 hours, and they just don't answer their phones. So not having an answer from my customer is bad. Tire Care, exactly. People don't realize that they can do what any other human being can do. Exactly. Yeah. Honestly. Here's an interesting question for you guys, as well as just a couple statements, right? Depending on where you're sourcing your carriers, okay? There are situations that you can get into that can be an absolute nightmare. I wish Facebook would tell us who this is. But, as far as a Facebook user, when you source a carrier and you've got them off a load board, it's just a transaction, right? You're probably not going to use them again. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's something to be said about, taking the longer road when it comes to sourcing and finding carriers. This is why I love eCarrierCheck. And this is why I replaced the load boards with eCarrierCheck when I was a freight broker, because I could pick up the phone. I could start building relationships. Did it take longer? Did I get instant satisfaction or gratification because I wasn't posting up a load on a load board and getting a call and being done with the load? Man, I tell you what, I loved to get on the phone with somebody and just say, hey, how you doing? What do you do? Tell me about your trucks. Where do you go? How do you feel comfortable about things? Because I tell you what, the guy that just said that a moment ago, he said, the guy that's, said, hey, I'm having this issue. When you built a good relationship, those guys aren't going to be there, right? The double brokering. Let's be honest. Here's a perfect example. Double brokering doesn't happen off the load boards. All those double brokers live on the load boards. Mm-hmm. That truck stop, they live on load boards. Right. You're not calling it. Maybe you could. But normally, if you're calling somebody on our site, you can see, hey, do they have any inspections? You can talk to the owner, right? It's a very intentional phone call, right? And so I think it's something that you need to work on, in my opinion, is making sure. I get it. You have to use load boards. This is why we built eCarrierCheck. I was obsessed with load boards. That was the only way I found people, right? But I changed that model from 90% sourcing on load boards and just flip-flopped it on its face. Yep. And I went straight eCarrierCheck, 10% on load boards when I just got in those situations, right? A lot of comments coming in. For the sake of it, we may have to go back and hit some of these. Justin says, how do you re-provide value to a customer after a load went bad and the customer is hesitant to use you again? What a great question. And honestly, I don't know if you can see this down in the comments or not, but Brian just hit it on the head. Taking ownership, try it again, be humble. I think, and I talk to my kids about this a lot, right? Take ownership, understand accountability, right? It's so important that you honestly just own up, or, as we like to call it, man up, and just say, you know what, I jacked up. because it's the only way you're going to be able to get that done. Right. So I think it's really important that you own up to the situation. You let them know, hey, here's what I'm doing. Because I think this is an interesting question, because you should do something more formally and just say, hey, shipper, here was my situation. Here's how I sourced that carrier. Here's what went wrong with that load. Here's what I'm doing to not let this situation happen again.
I love that.
And try to do it in kind of a systematic approach. It's like snowblowing. You don't just go willy-nilly and just let it go, right? You go up and down. You're not mowing your lawn like a friggin' clown, are you? Right? It's just, you got to go systematically. Do it in engineered practice and keep going. Greg says, if I send a driver tracking, they do not accept the tracking within the hour. Remove them from the load. If they're not willing to accept tracking, they'll not pick up, or it's a double brokering situation. Yeah, honestly, Greg, this is an interesting point, because they do have to be willing. A lot of drivers, especially in today's market, understand they're going to be tracked. A lot of these tech companies have done a better job of I remember when I first started in 2008, this is kind of comical, but we were tracking some loads. And to be honest with you, it was tracking it literally. I remember our driver, because this is when I worked for a trucking company at that particular time. One of our drivers goes, well, it just kills my phone in like an hour. The technology was so just
eating up his phone
it was
battery.
Just eat up his phone battery. And it's like, okay, you got a good point.
Tinfoil.
Exactly. But a lot of the tech companies have really done a nice job with getting those tracking solutions to not eat up. It's just a typical, it's no different than me playing solitaire on my app, or going on to TikTok, I suppose, at this point, right? Yeah. So all good questions. I love the questions today. Keep them coming. I think something that is the next part of adding value is the experience aspect, but understanding how to get rates, right? This is probably, we could have a whole show on rates, and maybe we do at some point.
I think we should.
But how do you quote something, right? There's the question of the day. Shipper comes to you, you just got set up, you got their org chart, and he comes to you and says, hey, I got a flatbed load from Alabama over to Texas. How much is it? Right. You need to have multiple ways of handling pricing, right? The first way is the grind, and this is where I came from. Is I was in the trenches getting pricing from carriers, right? There's software now that lets you do this, DAT rate view. There's a greenscreen.ai. They're a pricing platform, right, where you can see some really interesting pricing levels. But what I did was just the old school way. This didn't cost anything but my time and my phone bill, right? Is I would pick up the phone and look for carriers. Guess what? eCarrierCheck can help you find carriers that run lanes, right? And I would look for guys that are probably from Texas, not Alabama. Hey, how much do you need, right? Because when you're communicating back to a shipper, right? And just because they said, hey, there's a load from Alabama over to Texas. Perfect. What's the time frame on this, right? Asking those experienced questions, right? Because if you have more time, boy, is it easier to source.
Yeah.
If it's next week, life's good. If it's this afternoon by 3, you better grind. You better get the thing on a load board, and then you better just start calling carriers off eCarrierCheck until you find somebody to go. And at that point, I'm not looking for a backhaul guy. I'm just looking for a guy that's actually right there within 50 miles. Right. I'm trying to find the Bryans of Alabama. Right. That's what you're doing. And if you pay a fair rate and you look through there, I think that's really important. So how do you get rates? Pick up the phone, right? There is some software, no different than, we just talked about tracking, right? There is software out there that's decent, that has a ways to go. There's a pricing platform called Speed to Quote that I've heard about. Greenscreen.ai, DAT has DAT rate view. So there's a few different places you can get rates and try to get that done. But having negotiating rates on both ends of the party, obviously let's talk about it from a broker standpoint. If you get, a carrier to agree upon $1,000, then you're going to take it up, whatever percentage, that you feel you can, right? I'm going to guess it's not going to be more than 30%, 40%, but you just get what you can, ask for feedback, and then go.
Right. And especially with the new shipper, I mean, you want to build that trust, so don't get too crazy. But, move some lanes, move some loads, build that trust. Really, just things will get better as you grow that relationship.
Yeah, you don't need to share the sheep in the first load.
Right. Yeah.
We're not making truck payments today.
Don't get greedy in a
yeah,
way. I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, just provide value, get them a quote as quick as you can, and then follow the process. Mm-hmm. Right. I wouldn't be afraid. Some of the things that people are afraid to ask. Right. The first one is, well, how quick do you pay your freight? Right. Mm-hmm. I always ask that up front. That's in my foundation. Well, what are your typical terms in getting paid? If they're not paying you in at least 30 days, negotiate it or walk away. We all need to be getting paid. That's my opinion. Now, some of these huge corporations, they'll put 45 days in there. Maybe the juice is worth the squeeze, right? But outside of that, we all need cash, right? We all have a mortgage. We all have a truck payment. We all have a phone to pay for. We all have a family to feed, right? They need to respect your time.
Right. And not every shipper is going to be a good match for you. So it's okay to kind of move on. I've talked to many brokers in my time being at eCarrierCheck, and they tell me, I had to cut ties. It wasn't it. Yeah, Justin, right. You need that money, right?
You do.
And honestly, think about it as a team effort here,
Right.
Be upfront about what you want, what you need. If, like you said, if you can't get that, well, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. So. And for those of you actually taking, you just got a new shipper. If you're new in this industry, don't skip this step. Run credit on these shippers. Mm-hmm. Make sure that they can pay you, because that's you don't want to be stuck holding the bag and they haven't paid you for 90 days, 120 days.
For a new broker, where can you run credit?
That's an
I had that question yesterday because we can't do that on eCarrierCheck.
Right, no credit checks on it. If you look up just how to run credit on businesses, commercial credit, there's several different places. Factoring companies, for those of you dealing with factoring companies, boy, you can run credit. They want their money just as bad as you want yours. So they have a great way of looking at credit. So factoring company, if you're dealing with those, exactly. Use factoring company if you use a good one. If not, there's a couple different places that are, credit.net or, but use your factoring company and they'll run it for you. I'm going through this right now. Shipper hasn't paid 90 days to a point. Axel was trying to make me pay $2,000 each month. Had to send them a 5-day demand letter. I you know what the worst thing is, and I talk about that foundation, and maybe I go into a little bit more detail about the foundation. It's not just knowing. Now I don't know the situation in that particular case, but it's not just knowing who the AP person is, but it's knowing the process of what they want and how to be paid. Right? Everybody has a different language in a sense of how do they recognize a shipment. It's not your load number from your TMS, I'll tell you that. They have to have a PO number. Maybe it's a receiver's city, something. They need to know how to pay these bills, right? So take the time. When you get that foundation set up, take the time to understand how do you want the bills? What's the worst thing that we can do? I would actually pick up the phone and talk to the AP person, right? Hey, how can we do this? What works best for you? What have you seen that hasn't worked that I can avoid?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Because then you get situations like this where the shipper hasn't paid for 90 days. Yeah. There is nothing worse. If you're close to them, this is just my opinion. If you're close to them, I used to be in outside sales. I used to walk in with freight bills and I'd be like, hey, we're 90 days out. We're not picking up anymore, but we do need this paid. Any chance I can get a check today? I mean, you got to think how much you're going to pay for a lawyer versus traveling to get to that shipper. This is also another thing that I recommend when you're just getting started. Find shippers that are 200 to 300, 400 miles away from you. Something that's realistic. Geographically, you can relate to them on the phone. Yeah. Hey, I'm from Western Nebraska, and I'm over in Colorado, right? Yeah. So I find some of those people. It is a terrible feeling. I'm super sorry you're dealing with that. I hate it. I mean, it's terrible. Even if they have bad credit, get them to prepay. The ones who have bad or no credit are used to having to do them, so you won't be offend them. Honestly, you kind of hit it on the head. You're not the only person that they've had to listen to that conversation with. It's no different than all those Glendale loads. I got the opportunity to work in that brokerage a couple weeks ago, and every friggin' call was a Glendale double broker. They all know because the freight brokers are like, yeah, we don't work with you. They don't even have a conversation with them. They're like, what's your MC? And then they run their MC and for the love of God, it's just friggin'.
Yeah.
It's like they just get used to it. They know that we can't work with you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call on the next one. Good point, Robert. Take a credit card, get an ACH, get something to get that cash in the bank. So, we've talked about having knowledge today. Having a variety of carriers is so important with your shipper.
Mm-hmm.
You can bounce things off them. Let me tell you, if you're a new freight broker and you are calling people in Tire Killer's area, and Brian picks up the phone, Brian's going to probably add more experience and value to you on that conversation than you would have from anyone else. He's got the experience. He's been driving around. It's so different than with most conversations with carriers. They've got good experience, right? They've got good understanding of, hey, this is what I do. I've got a step check. This is what I understand. This is how I do it. And this is why I'm doing it, right? They get trucking. So you have thousands of people that you can pick up the phone and have a conversation with and build your experience really quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously we haven't even talked about handling documentations properly. There's a lot to that. And maybe we talk about that in another one, but I will hit some highlights on a shipper one. Okay. When you get a new shipper, obviously you should be sending them your insurance, your W-9. Usually that's set up when you're taking care of your accounting and things like that. Okay. But make sure when you do send them your insurance certificate that, hey, I got a new insurance certificate. Just wanted to pass this along for your file. Some shippers, depending on the size, will require that you get listed. Some will ask for endorsements. I could get into a lot of stuff when it comes to the insurance certificate and those aspects. But handling your documents, it's everything. If there's ever an accident, and something really bad happens, boy, you better have followed the process. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Can't cut corners.
You did your due diligence on a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
You have their carrier packet. They signed your broker carrier agreement. Yep. It's a bad situation, right? When somebody's life is at stake. Yeah. But making sure that you follow all that, having copies of all that, because honestly, we get going so fast in this industry. Forget it. Yeah. You can't remember everything, right? So making sure that you just have a great process set up, not only for your shippers, but for your carriers, so that it's seamless, right? Yeah, bills go out, keep your carrier packets, keep your insurance up to date, those things like that. Yeah,
good stuff.
So outside of that, I think that's a pretty hefty amount of things that you can do for shippers. Yeah. Obviously, there were some incredible questions today. Thank you for the comments. I'm sure open to anybody watching this. Keep all mine external hard drive in its own folder and just a few clicks away if they have it. Yeah. Honestly, that you kind of hit it on the head, Brian. Everybody's going to ask, hey, can you send me your documents? And it's just a point click and you go. Yeah. It used to be you had to stop at a friggin' truck stop, fax the sons.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm about 3 miles out from a truck stop. I'll get it faxed here in a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I've been there. I've seen it. So it's nice that you've got that few clicks away. Having internet, obviously, as a driver, that hotspot, kind of important. So, close us out though, Nate. Well, any thoughts on today?
No, I think the last thing I did want to mention, just be organized. I think in this industry, like you hit it on the head too, we go so fast. So just try to keep yourself organized, set reminders. Do what Tire Killer does. Keep it on a hard drive. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But other than that, thanks for everyone joining today. Yeah. As you can see at the bottom, eCarrierCheck.com, schedule a demo. I'll send you a demo of the site and see how you can grow some relationships with carriers and let's find some shippers.
Yeah.
And join the community. We're here to help each other grow. So we appreciate everyone's support. We want to give back. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Love the questions today. Have a great weekend, guys. And we'll